I'm talking to you on my phone camera, and literally everybody else, Facebook, uh, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, talking to you guys here on my DSLR. I've got a quick and dirty 8 a.m. live for you today. It is 8:01 in sunny Charlotte, North Carolina this morning. My name is Ren Jones. For those that don't know me, I'm a certified personal trainer, a certified corrective exercise specialist, both of those through NASM, National Academy of Sports Medicine. Also, a certified level 1 and level 2 nutrition coach, sport and exercise nutrition coach through Precision Nutrition. Also, certified menopause health and fitness specialist through MedFit, and I've also got a menopause coaching certification through Girls Gone Strong. I work exclusively and only with a population of women over 30, typically moms over 30. And I've got a quick and dirty live broadcast for you. Before I get into the meat of the live broadcast today, which is 3 tips for women in midlife, 3 nutrition tips that you may want to shift towards, 3 exercise tips, ladies, that you may want to shift towards as you get into the front door of the menopause spectrum, that being perimenopause to postmenopause. Before I get into that, I got to pay some bills and acknowledge a few people. First, the t-shirt of the day. It's an important situation here on the live broadcast. It's from my homeboy David London at formerly Desk Bound Therapy. I'm going to tag him here, but David is a gentleman that I met at a convention in Toronto in 2017. He specialized at that time in mobility for desk bound individuals. So if you worked at a desk all day, David was the guy to see. So shout out to him. Second thing, I got to pay the bills because I'm currently enrolling. My 12-week signature program, Women's Liberation Movement, is enrolling from today until Sunday, the end of this week. I'm taking at least 5 women over 30 who want to build their healthiest body and healthiest relationship with their body and healthiest relationship with food without doing calorie counting, without counting macros, without weighing or measuring food, and without spending your life in a gym. So if that sounds like you ladies, just DM me the word live, LIVE, and we'll see if the process might be a good fit for your needs. Let's get into it. So, 3 tips for nutrition, 3 tips for exercise for that menopause spectrum. I'm saying women in midlife. Also, we typically say women over 30, over 40 rather, because that menopause continuum for most women starts anywhere mid to late 30s. It's not the same for every single woman out there, but generally speaking, 35-ish, 38-ish, you might start seeing signs of perimenopause, the initial stages of the menopause transition, where estrogen and progesterone start to fluctuate. You may note it by incredible exhaustion all of a sudden. I've had women tell me that all of a sudden they felt like their body got soft. They lost their muscle tone. Shifts in your menstrual cycle, usually 7-ish, 10-ish days, heavier sometimes, lighter sometimes, unpredictable, 7 to 10 days late or early. The back half of that perimenopausal spectrum, we see fluctuations at up to 3 months, early, late, or continuous. But in any case, then menopause, which is technically one day, the one day after 12 consecutive months of not having a menstrual cycle. Everything after that being postmenopause, where estrogen and progesterone tend to flatline. But in any case, I'm talking about the women in that window. If you're not in that window, you still might want to listen up because nobody gets a pass on this one, unfortunately, ladies. So in terms of your exercise and nutrition, the things that I'm going to describe to you this morning are dependent on that fluctuation of estrogen. Estrogen's like the super juice power for women, and you have estrogen receptors through almost every system in your bodies, ladies. So as estrogen starts to withdraw or decline or fluctuate wildly in perimenopause, that front door to the transition, you'll notice that your systems fluctuate wildly. So let's talk about nutrition really quickly, because one of the most important things that estrogen does, and one of the most important things that you'll see a shift in, and this shift will definitely start in your 30s, perimenopause or not, ladies, is reduction of muscle loss, age-related muscle loss. It's called sarcopenia. Sarcopenia, Sarcopenia. I feel like I just went to spelling bee. So That's going to start in your 30s, regardless. Men too, by the way. Age related muscle loss. So, one of the big shifts that you might need to make in your nutrition as you get into the front door of this menopause transition, ladies, as you get into midlife, is you've got to be a cookie monster, but for protein. Imagine the cookie monster just eating all the protein. Now, some protein doesn't have to be animal based protein, although one of my streams has connection issues. That made me sad. It can be plant based. It doesn't have to be. That happened again. I'm losing my streams here, but I'm a man in his 40s. In any case, but it can be plant based. So protein is going to become crucial because as estrogen starts to fluctuate, so too is your ability to actually absorb the protein that you eat. That's problematic, right? Because muscle is the tone that everybody wants. Muscle is keeping your metabolism running smoothly and optimally. Muscle is your independence. Muscle is the new 401k, ladies. Like your retirement plan is linked to how much muscle you have on your body. And naturally, men and women, naturally, we're going to start to lose that muscle around age 30 or so. And it accelerates for women. The muscle loss accelerates once we get in that front door to that menopause transition. So this is why a lot of women will tell me, all of a sudden, Ren, it feels like overnight I lost on my tone. Like I used to have muscle right here, and now that I push it is squishy, right? This is the onset of sarcopenia. We want to avoid this at all costs. Nutritionally, we've got to prioritize protein. This may be something that had not been a priority for you before, or not to the extent that I'm going to tell you, because we want to get a good amount of protein throughout the day. So, first thing first, it's going to be difficult to get an appropriate amount of protein if you don't start with your first meal of the day, or if your first meal of the day is in the afternoon. I'm not a great big advocate for intermittent fasting for women, particularly in this transition, more specifically for women who are active through the menopause transition, which I hope you all are. I hope that's why you're here, ladies. One of the practical reasons that I'm not a fan of fasting till noon or things like that is because, man, it's going to be hard to get in all of that protein that you need throughout the day. Unfortunately, with protein, you can't load it up. You can't get like a big shot of protein at one part of the day and just ride off on that protein for the rest of the day like you can carbs. You've probably heard the term carb loading. You distance runners, you distance athletes out there, you're definitely familiar with sort of carbing up to take you through a race. And even if it's that extraneous, you still have to get some more. But in any case, when you think of protein and getting it into your body, think of like I used to work at Food Lion. It's a grocery store in the Southeast, and I used to have to mop every single aisle in the store every night. Think about dumping a mop bucket into a sink that's not stopped up, right? There's no stopper in the sink. If you dump all that mop water into that sink, it'll rise for a second, maybe hold for a second, and then eventually it's going to break down. It's going to drain down. That's how protein acts in your cells when you ingest it. Technically, we're talking about amino acids, the broken down form of protein, but we don't want to get too sciencey here, right? We just want to make it plain. But that's the way protein acts in your body. So you can dump a whole bunch of protein in the morning and think, I'm going to ride off into the protein sunset the rest of the day, right? But it's not going to work that way. What your body doesn't need at the time is going to be flushed out of those amino acid pools, and you're going to need to ingest more protein. So you want to prioritize getting protein throughout the day. And because you need a significant amount of it, 20 to 30 grams per meal, 15 grams of protein per snack. You've got 3 meals and relatively 2 snacks throughout the course of the day, should satisfy. But we're looking at a solid, a gram or so of protein per pound of body weight. And that's per pound of ideal body weight, we say from time to time. But that's a significant amount of protein throughout the day. And we can talk more about that specifically for you if you feel like you need to reach out to me. But we want to be able to maintain that muscle that we're losing, because the muscle that we're losing is going to reduce our posture, is going to make us feeble over time. I say this on almost every live broadcast, but if you remember grandma being feeble and needing to be helped up the stairs or off the toilet or in and out of the bathtub, or mama or Gigi or G mama or abuela. That was a result of them losing muscle. And the great news is we can get around that with some strength training. We'll talk about that in the 3 exercise tips, but we can also get around that with making sure we're getting enough protein throughout the course of the day. So that one significant thing for women in this stage might be, probably is, definitely is, see how I escalated that? That escalated quickly. Definitely is going to be sort of nutrient timing. And you'll see a lot of exercise specialists and nutrition specialists saying it doesn't matter when you get your nutrients in. And for the most part, it doesn't. But for women in the spectrum, you sort of want to, instead of bookending nutrition at the beginning of the day and the end, you want to bookend it around your exercise, right? So before you exercise, a little bit of protein, right? So a little, half a scoop of protein powder in your morning latte, frappuccino thing, whatever that is. I don't drink coffee. Don't at me. I don't want any. Or something as simple as a little bit of nut butter on toast, right? You don't have to have a full Denny's meal before you exercise. You don't need a Rudy Tooty Fresh and Fruity from IHOP, although they are delicious. But we want to get some fuel in, some protein in going into the workout, and bookending your exercise with protein after, probably within an hour, because of the reduced amount of estrogen. Your body isn't as resilient to stress at this point, and your body could stay in a breakdown state if you put it through a nice, tough workout and then delay eating after. It stays in that breakdown state, and you don't want to do that. You want to feed it. What's going to exercise or stress? What's going to minimize or cut the stress response for you ladies at this stage in your life after you exercise is feeding your body. And in this case, you want 30 to 40 grams of protein in that feeding after your exercise. So that's sort of number one nutritionally. The second thing nutritionally that you might want to consider is, and I shudder to say this because people have gone carb crazy. You might want to taper off the more processed carbs in your life earlier in the day, like maybe even 2 to 4 hours before bedtime. This isn't a hard, stone cold fact, written on a tablet on Mount Ararat. Like that. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is some women may find themselves to be a little bit less carb tolerant as estrogen starts to fluctuate and eventually withdraw from the body. That's not going to be everybody. Take a look at how it works for you. But I've had some clients who have found that sort of after that lunchtime feeding, the starchier carbs don't do as well for them on into the evening. Now, I say that with the caveat that every single vegetable and fruit on the planet is a carbohydrate. So I think oftentimes when we think carbs, we're only thinking pastas, breads, cookies, cakes. But vegetables and fruits are great for you, good for you. I'm not joining that bandwagon of stay away from fruit. It's sugar. That's silly. Come on, guys. Like that's silly. Um, but what I'm saying is the more processed version of carbohydrates, the breads, the cookies, the cakes, the pastas, the rice, maybe even potatoes, and nothing wrong with the potato. Nothing, it's a healthy, it's got a high satiety index too. Potatoes keep you full for a while. But I'm saying those starchier carbohydrates later into the evening, you may find as an individual, because of the way your body is adjusting to the changes in estrogen, and because of the fact that estrogen runs through the digestive system, right, the GI tract, there are estrogen receptors there. So everywhere that you have receptors for estrogen, you have to realize that the fluctuation and withdrawal of estrogen is going to affect it's going to make that system fluctuate in performance as well. So second thing, you may want to start withdrawing on carbs. The third thing that I'm going to mention is probably going to get me some hate mail. And I'm not trying to take this away from you, ladies, but you may want to observe and potentially modify your relationship with alcohol, right? And I'm not trying to take your wine, but the pervasive wine culture of the sophisticated woman in midlife directly clashes with the science of alcohol and midlife, particularly the menopause spectrum. Alcohol makes almost everything more difficult. It complicates nearly everything, right? So when we talk about vasomotor symptoms for the woman in midlife, and that's the hot flushes, sweats, and things like that, alcohol makes that worse for most women. Women aren't monolithic. There's no one menopausal experience. Some are different, but generally speaking, and in higher than average incidence, alcohol makes the hot flushes worse. It makes the night sweats worse. It makes the sleeplessness worse. It makes the difficulty in reducing overall body fat more difficult in reducing overall body fat. Hey, Kim. So that can be a complicating factor. And I'm not telling you, I can, as a man at 49 years old, I've learned long enough to go that you never insinuate, insist, or attempt to tell a grown ass woman what she should or should not do with her life. As a coach, I don't operate in those circles either. My job is to give you the science as I understand it, compassionately, and leave you to make the decisions for yourself. That's what autonomy is. And coaching without autonomy is parenting, and I'm not ridiculous enough to believe that I can parent my 30 and over women that are my clientele. That'd be done, right? What I'm saying is maybe you take a break for 30 days, see how you feel, see how your symptoms crop up or die down. Make a great decision after that. So alcohol is the third nutritional tip. So, in terms of those nutrition tips, we talked about getting a good amount of protein throughout the course of the day. It's going to help you maintain your muscle. We talked about carbohydrates and how they may affect you at this point in your menopause transition across the menopause spectrum. It's not everybody. Carbs aren't bad, but you may want to start minimizing them towards the back half of your eating day. And we talked about alcohol, and we mentioned a little bit about the prospect of fasting and how that might be counterproductive. There's a longer list of reasons why I don't subscribe to that for active women going through the menopause spectrum. A live broadcast for some time this week later. We'll get into that. But let's talk about the exercise. Some exercise shifts that you may want to make as a midlife woman, a woman over 40, a woman possibly in the transition of menopause from peri to menopause to post. And the first thing is, without question, strength training, right? If you're not on the strength training bandwagon, right, the resistance training bandwagon, it's a bandwagon that's good to catch up to and get on at this point in your life. Again, tracking back to the first thing that I said about the protein, you're losing muscle at a significant rate ever since your 30s, muscle loss, if you're not a woman who was already strength training, since your 30s, your body's been slowly reducing the amount of muscle. And again, muscle is your posture, muscle is your grace, ladies. Muscle is your 401k, your retirement plan. Muscle is your independence. Muscle is your protection against cardiovascular risk over time. Muscle is the grace and the way that you wear your clothes, right? All of that tone stuff that I have conversations with women about, that's muscle. That's what it is. So you want to preserve that. So strength training, if you're not doing already, you want to start getting involved in some strength training. Doesn't necessarily take weights. We're just working against gravity, and that could be doing a body weight squat. You're working against gravity to stand back up. That could be a bicep curl. You've got dumbbells in your hand and you're working against gravity to pull them up. There's a range of strength training and lots of ways to do it. So I find that certain times, certain types of strength training can sometimes feel more intimidating to women than others. Like the idea of going into a gym might feel really intimidating for some of you, but the idea of buying some exercise bands that you can use at home sounds really inviting. It's a good gateway for you. So I don't want to be rigid in the type of strength training that I suggest. I have a preference to weights and weight training, just not only because of the scientific aspect of doing the strength training, because you just feel like a badass with a barbell in your hands. And the women here who have had that feeling know what I'm talking about. Like It's empowering. Keeping you away from weights has been diet culture's long-standing trick to make you feel less empowered. You've been convinced to shrink at all costs instead of become powerful at any cost. And that's diet culture's great. That's them pulling the wool over your eyes, ladies, because once you get your hands on a dumbbell or a barbell, or you lift a weight that you never thought you could, it's a cheat code to empowerment. That's why I like it so much. I rest my case on that. But you're losing muscle post 30 years old. Everybody is, men, women, everybody. If you're not strength training to a into strength, let me go back the truck up a second. That rate of muscle loss increases as you get in the doorway to perimenopause, right? The withdrawal of estrogen, just it's like a rocket ship that increases the loss of muscle. So that's why we get feeble and clumsy, and we can't catch ourselves if we're about to fall. So the first shift in that strength training, if you are doing strength training now, the next part of that shift is that you may want to consider heavier weight for lesser repetitions. I'm going to try to give you the best non-sciencey explanation of some deep science where it comes to your muscle. Right now, I'm going to do my best. So the withdrawal of estrogen, I had to take a breath. Like I felt like I was going to recite a prayer in front of everybody at church. So the withdrawal of estrogen affects muscle in a few ways. Number one, we know that it is muscle loss. But number two, the ability to get a great, nice contraction of the muscle, it becomes more difficult. Estrogen acts on two proteins. Those proteins are called actin and myosin. Think of them like a zipper, right? That's the best way I can explain this. So you got actin over here and myosin over here, actin, myosin for the folks on the camera. And when you contract that muscle, they zip up and they give you a firm contraction, right? That zipper's tight. Well, withdrawing estrogen makes that process a little bit more lax. It's not as good as it was. The estrogen that used to help your body really contract those muscles, it's withdrawing, and now we have to do it manually, right? So another good example here is like, let's say your muscles are a television, your workout is the remote control to the television, and estrogen is the batteries inside the remote control, right? You got that? So your muscles are a TV, your workout is the remote control, and estrogen's in the batteries in the remote control. You're pushing all the right buttons, right? But if the batteries are dead in the remote, what happens? It doesn't change the channel. It doesn't turn up or down. You hit it a few times because that's your right. You should hit it a few times. And it still doesn't work. You check the drawer, all the batteries that are in the battery drawer, we've all got one, they're all dead. You can't. So now you got to get up and change the channel on the TV. When I grew up, I'm a 1974 baby, I was the remote control in my house. And I could be in the backyard and I just hear a yell to come in the house and change the channel. So that estrogen that's withdrawing, it doesn't allow those signals from your workout to get to your muscles the right way. And now you got to do it manually. You've got to get up and change the TV yourself. This is sort of what's going on with getting those great muscle contractions. So where you could always do, your relatively moderate weight, 10 to 12, 10 to 15 repetitions. Now we want to increase the weight because we've really got to tax the muscle to give us that contraction that it used to give us when estrogen was plentiful, when it was bountiful in your system. So you may find yourself, and what I do with my clients in this spectrum is I work in some 3 to 5s, right? 3 to 5 sets of an exercise, 3 to 5 repetitions of that exercise, 3 to 5 minutes rest, because I'm having them lift a much heavier weight, something that they can only work with safely, and heavier is a relative term, something that they can work with safely for 3 to 5 repetitions, so that by the time they get to 3, 4, and 5, it's pretty taxing. I say that within reason. I say that within the confines of safety. I'm not going to load their spine with a power lifter squat and see if they can get back up, but within reason, because I need to manually force that type of contraction. And if I add that to what you learned earlier about getting enough protein throughout the day, we can sort of counteract that muscle loss and counteract the tendency for our muscles not to contract as well. That's a big mindset shift for a lot of my clients who are used to working in the 12 to 15 repetition range, or 12 to 25 reps with very, very lightweight, right? The shrink it and pink it campaign of big fitness in the 80s, right? We don't want women lifting heavy, so let's give them super light dumbbells, and we'll put those things in magazines. And when they see a celebrity, we'll make sure they got the super light powder blue or pink dumbbells. Maybe time to grab the iron, ladies. It's dirty, dingy, rusted dumbbells and barbells. Get in there, get the guys out of the way. They've taken up space for a long enough time. So that's the first consideration for fitness. The second thing is, you may be in a spot where it's time to, and I say you may be, but the science points to this clearly. You're in a spot where it may be time to polarize your cardiovascular conditioning, your cardio, right? And again, if you're in the menopause transition now, you're probably Generation X, and fitness meant bouncing around in the 80s, right? Jane Fonda was bouncing around. Richard Simmons was bouncing around. Olivia Newton-John was getting physical. Jamie Lee Curtis and John Travolta had that weird eye contact thing in that movie Perfect with the grinding. That was just, cringe. That was just a really weird movie. But in any case, so now you might want to shift your cardio to that sort of 45-minute long, I want to get sweaty session, to a shorter 20-minute long, high intensity interval training or sprint interval training, because we want to work our cardio in a shorter spurt with greater intensity, with intervals for rest in between, or we want our cardiovascular conditioning to be very, 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 very light to light, moderate, um, an easy, purposeful, mind clearing walk, an enjoyable ride on the bike, a nice swim that feels great, because we're working with a central nervous system that isn't as resilient. Because guess what else estrogen was doing? It was helping you maintain a level of resilience to stress. It was helping you maintain a calm central nervous system. We talk about your fight or flight nervous system, your sympathetic nervous system, the one that gets you out of a jam or solves problems, or the one that you feel when you're stressed out. That's your sympathetic nervous system. And typically associated with that type of nervous system response is cortisol, stress hormone, that can lead to extra body fat, particularly in the trunk. We want to work, we want to balance into the parasympathetic nervous system. We call it your rest and digest nervous system, because guess what? That nervous system gives us nice shots of whatever estrogen is available. We know that when we're in a stress state, your body in its wisdom starts to shut down your, let's say, your sexual function. There's an axis, but I don't want to get into that too much. But in any case, when you go to your stress nervous system, your sexual and rest nervous system, where the estrogen pumps a little bit better, it starts to cut off. So you may have experienced yourself as a sort of hardcore athlete losing your menstrual cycle, amenorrhea, or witnessed a hardcore woman athlete losing her menstrual cycle because of the stress of really intense exercise over a long period of time. Those two sides of your nervous system don't operate simultaneously that way. One takes over the other. So when you're doing that sort of 45-minute long sweaty session, that F45 type, Orange Theory fitness type, regularly, and if you're not getting a good feeding within an hour after that, your body gets to a state of continuous stress, and it's good stress. Exercise is good stress, but we're not feeding it properly, and it's not the greatest way for us to get the results that we want. We can do better at this hormonal profile, and I fight with my clients on this all the time. We can do better on that hormonal profile by having a 20-minute or so very intense session where you're going as hard as you can for 20 or 30 seconds, resting for a minute or 2 minutes to fully recover, coming back through and going as hard as you can for 20 or 30 seconds. And most of my clients do sprint intervals on the bike. right? It's easy access. It's not too bad on the joints. We're going to talk about that in a second, and I'm going to wrap up this live. But you may find yourself wanting to be polarizing with your cardiovascular conditioning. Short and very intense, not going past 20 or 30 minutes. Think of all the time you'll save. Or light and enjoyable and moving in the direction of recovery to take you out of the stress response of your day or your life or your job or your asshole kid or your asshole spouse or taking care of your parents in their ailing and aging years so that you can bring your nervous system down to that sympathetic level. Something to consider. My clients hate it, but they give in after a while and they get the results that they need. So, third thing, last thing for your exercise, we want to get involved in some jump training, right? We call it plyometrics. This is because of something else that happens after 30 that accelerates through the menopause spectrum called osteopenia. And this is age related bone loss. So it's really problematic because the withdrawal of estrogen also controls your body's ability to a certain extent to reform, remodel bone, right? So you're going to have natural bone loss after 30, but we can deal with this too, ladies, by involving some load. The strength training will do that, putting load on the spine and the bones, and by involving some impact, some stress. Now, obviously, you want to check with your medical professional. You want to make sure that you don't already have bone issues or joint issues that can be exacerbated by you jumping around like House of Pain. Jump around. Um, Love that song, by the way. But you want to make sure that you're cleared to do this, and you can start small. You don't have to box jump 6 feet in the air like your favorite Instagram influencer. A 1 or 2 inch jump up to a platform, absolutely fine. A 1 or 2 inch jump down, great place to start. We want movement in multiple planes of motion. So unfortunately, running alone won't fit the bill here because we want to jump forward. We want to get some jumps backward, side to side. Tennis is great here. Basketball is great here if you love basketball. I'd imagine pickleball would be great here. It's basically the same thing as tennis. But just 10 minutes of that type of training 3 times a week has been shown in addition to having nutrients. Like you can't do this in a state of low, you can't starve yourself and rebuild your bones. Let's get that out of the way. But just 10 minutes 3 times a week has been shown to really circumvent this. And now we know that you can actually rebuild those bones later on in life, which is great, 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 great news. That's awesome, man. You just want to implement it. So if jump training is not something that you're doing, Google plyometric training, jump training, putting some stress of impact on those bones as long as you're medically cleared and making sure that you're getting adequately fed. We don't want to do a bunch of fasting. Again, if you're active, you need fuel to be active, right? It's just, it kind of makes sense. That's something that you want to consider. So there you have it. Live broadcast over 3 considerations for exercise for the midlife woman based on the spectrum of menopause and the transition, and 3 considerations for nutrition. Did I say exercise first or nutrition? But it's exercise and nutrition, 3 for both. I hope that's helpful. I'm going to pay the bills one more time because I am currently enrolling for my 12-week signature program, Women Liberation Movement. I'm taking at least 5 women over 30 that want to build their healthiest body and their healthiest relationship with their body, while also building their healthiest relationship with food without doing any calorie counting, without counting macronutrients or weighing or measuring food, and without spending your life in the gym. Because as much as I love the gym is not life. Gym is meant to help with life, but it's not meant to be life. So if that sounds like something that interests you, DM me the word live, LIVE, or live, I guess looks the same way. And we'll see what your situation is and how we might be able to help you. Until tomorrow, when I bring another 8 a.m. live session to you, I'll see you next time. Ladies, let's keep it simple. Until tomorrow, Instagram, thanks for rocking with me. Thank you, Kim. You're welcome, ladies. You're welcome. You're welcome. Let's keep it simple. And I'll see you guys tomorrow at 8 a.m.